Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Insight with Oladejo. The new reforms haven't been quite lucky when it comes to it being misinterpreted. Someone just said casually, "Oh, Nigerians have been paying 5% on fossil fuel since 1st of January," and I know that that definitely is not correct. The extent of misinformation or possibility of misinformation is one of the reasons why I thought, okay, we should have a channel like this, where we can correct some of these things. And that's what we're going to be looking at today, the 5% fossil fuel surcharge introduced, in Nigeria. The question is it already payable? That's the question for determination. So it will interest you to know that this subject matter is quite important. And I'm saying it's quite important because when you look at the section of the law that guides its operation, an entire chapter was dedicated, to this matter, particularly Chapter 7 of the Nigeria Tax Act. And you would see that the provision relating to this, or provisions, I should say, cut across section 158 all the way through 161. And what does the law say? Let's break it down. The 5% surcharge, the critical question is, has it already commenced, and should Nigerians currently be paying an additional 5% on petrol, diesel, and other fossil fuel products? That's what, again, we are going to be examining. So specifically, Section 158 of Nigeria Tax Act imposes a surcharge of 5% on chargeable fossil fuel products provided or produced, in Nigeria. The introduction is such that when you get to Section 159, it mentions that it doesn't matter whether the supply of the product had happened or the sale of the product had happened or the payment for the product is what had happened. Anyone that occurs first out of these three possibilities would trigger the applicability of these surcharge. That's according to Section 159, saying supply, whether it's the mere supply of the product, or it's mere sale of the product, or it's mere payment for the product. Anyone that occurs first out of these three possibilities would trigger the applicability of the 5%, surcharge. And the emphasis, of course, to also note is that it is on the retail price. You see, I'm going step by step because when there are no clarifications, the possibility for ambiguity is heightened. The fellow that just made a comment and said, "Oh, Nigerians have been, go and check the law, is in the law. Nigerians have been paying, 5% on the fuel price, since the commencement of the tax law." When you look at it, that statement in itself is entirely not correct. But is there something like that in the law? Yes. And that's why we are reviewing precisely what the law says. Does the surcharge apply to every energy product? That's an important determination. Whether the surcharge applies to every energy product. You would see the answer to this in Section 161, which expressly exempts 4 categories of products. If you have clean or renewable energy products, if you have household kerosene, if you have cooking gas, and then CNG. These products, even though they are fossil fuel products, this particular surcharge does not apply to the sale, supply, or payment relating to this product. So the elephant in the room is this already applicable or payable in Nigeria? Is it particularly payable in Nigeria as had been acclaimed I don't know the number of people that would hear or number of people that individual has expressed that to, between 1st of January and last week, when I heard it, or number of people, or maybe it was even circulated, online thereafter, but it was convincingly, making that statement because that provision is in the law. But the law does introduce something that changes the mix, which is what we want to consider under section 160, because that section focuses on the trigger in terms of the commencement. Now, what the section says, is the fact that the minister, through an order published in official gazette, will indicate the effective date for the commencement of this surcharge. You see what I'm saying there? Now, the question is, to the best of my knowledge and as of the time of this podcast, that official gazette that is backed by the provision of section 160 of the Nigeria Tax Act, which should come from the minister, had not happened. So that then throws the answer to that very question, on the table. Is it really applicable already? If there's no gazette, if the section contemplates, if a particular section in the law contemplates that there must be a gazette, from the minister before this surcharge commences, applicability of this surcharge commences, then the question is, if there's no gazette, definitely the applicability of the surcharge, the 5%, surcharge on fossil fuel products, exempting the other 4 categories of products that we have mentioned earlier, hasn't yet commenced. Is the surcharge entirely new? Is it entirely new? Because sometimes people will just say, oh, they are just bringing a lot of new things. They have added things to the law. Not so. There's a provision in the FEMA Act 2007 that contemplated this. In fact, when I was, making some research, I found out that the pricing templates, the previous pricing templates of the PPP, the petroleum product pricing template had contemplated, that particular amount. But the question is, since the enactment of that act, was it introduced? The answer definitely is no. But is the concept entirely new to the Nigerian petroleum product markets? That answer is not a yes, because there was a law that had contemplated this, but it was in the Federal Road Maintenance Agency Amendment Act of 2007, which I'd referred to as the FEMA Act. So what should businesses do? Just know that there is a possibility that this surcharge will come in the future, and is going to be triggered by an official gazette from the minister. Once we have not received that gazette, we cannot be talking about the applicability. And this is issue relating to pricing of fuel is an emotional issue in Nigeria, and we know how things have been rather unstable regarding that particular item in recent times. So, in conclusion, there is a dedicated section of the law relating to the operationalization of this subject matter, and the answer to the question I've asked is this 5% surcharge on fossil fuel products already operational in Nigeria? The answer is no, because because the law contemplates that the official gazette must be released before its commencement, and we await that official gazette. Till I come your way again, don't stop sharing, don't stop engaging, don't stop liking. Let us continue to do our best to ensure that we have a business community that is fully educated on what impacts their businesses. Bye for now.